Alright, so in this video, it's called Everything You Need for Anoles. So obviously, we're going to be copying about a lot of things. So you basically be doing a deep dive, diving nice and deep into this subject. We're going to be going all the way into Anoles. I'm talking, we're going to be covering things like your UVB requirements, heat, etc. Very common information, very basic information, but nicely put into a lovely little video, bow-tied and all the fun stuff. So people at home who may have just bought an Anole today, thinking about getting one in a couple of months, or maybe you're just someone who's bored who keeps a whole collection like myself, but instead of making a video, you're watching a guy who made the video. Yeah, make it make sense. Bars. Now, to get us started, I think a safe subject is going to be talking about hydration with Anoles. Now, Anoles are basically, at the end of the day, I'm going to keep it simple for y'all, are frogs, right? They're frogs that have a tail after coming out the water. And they have scales and, require heat 9 times out of 10. But they're just a frog. Funny. The thing is, when it comes to hydration though, there's a lot of ways you can cook this turkey. Pretty much, you can either do something simple like a mister, which, a little hand mister, simple, nice and easy. Maybe you can get a misting system. Absolutely recommend it. Maybe you get a drip or a water bowl. Feels like the water bowl is very simple to explain. It's just a bowl of water. All I gotta say, if you're doing with Anoles, make sure it's above ground and you have some sort of way to have water actually, rip into it. That way the animal will recognize it and all that. But circle back down to the mister, guess what? Misters are extremely useful. Why is that? That's because, let's say you get home from work and you're like, the soil's looking a little dry. Dry soil? No, not happy. You get what I'm saying? Come in there and you just start all over the enclosure. It's dripping. I'm talking the soil's moist. The leaves are dripping. The animals are like all over the leaves. They're happy animals. But what I do recommend though when it comes to keeping the animal hydrated is obviously a misting system. These can be relatively cheap, honestly. If you have one, maybe 2 Anoles, or maybe you have a small collection, you can get away with getting a nice cheap one on Amazon. Let's say you have something like myself, you might need to make yours or get, a Mist King. No way to go else about it, honestly. Yeah. It's cool though. Work of a crown giant long enough, they'll even drink out of a cup out of your hand. Crazy. Yeah. This next part is something I feel like that's often overlooked and done horribly wrongly when it comes to Anoles. That is how we keep them. These wonderful little creatures will commonly be bought at Petco. Since, you can go to a Petco or PetSmart, grab yourself a brown and a green Anole, and sometimes even false chameleon. It's not so much common as the other two, but they're still there. People buy these animals, and what they're going to do is they're going to go home and they're going to put them in a 10-gallon, maybe a 20-gallon on a good day. And 9 times out of 10, these enclosures are barren, no soil depth if they have soil, and they'll maybe have 1 to 2 branches and plastic plants in a corner that they can't even technically access, at least on an efficient rate, to actually drink the droplets off of it. And in my book, that's absolutely disgusting. I don't care if you just got the animal today, oopsie daisy. Guess what? This is a living creature. We should do better. It isn't like a book. It isn't like a computer or an iPhone or something. You bought it because it was nice and cool. This is a living creature. We got to respect it and do right by it. Cool? Gotcha. But for some reason, it's always done so wrongly, and I don't feel like it's talked about enough. So hopefully me saying this will make a lot of people learn something or maybe change their current habits, and I really hope that happens. And that's because I truly believe on paper, in practice, and everything other ways you can put it, keeping an Anole should only be really kept in at least an adult, by the way, this is for adults, a 18 by 18 by 24 for adult or adult pair depending on species. Obviously crown giants are not subject to this rule because they're massive. Like, you see the thing behind me? It's blurry, but yeah, you can see the cage basically. They're massive, They don't work in something like that. But, that works great, and obviously well planted, bunch of sticks, different foliage, different micro changes for each individual species. But what I personally like to do is I like to keep my animals in a 20 by 20 by 36. Larger, deeper, taller. Love it. They seem to love it too. It helps with a lot of other fun stuff, which is a different video. Watch the other videos if you like what you're seeing. Now, my friends, I hope you're enjoying this journey, but we're almost towards the end of the subjects to yap about, which is actually UVB. UVB gets kind of pushed to the wayside a lot because when it comes to the new keepers, they'll either get a UV bulb 9 times out of 10 or they'll get a poorly made UV tube, which sucks. So let's talk about it real quick. Obviously, UV bulbs have a purpose. They are still useful and a lot better than no UVB. Issue is, when it comes to, say, a UV bulb, let's say this is our enclosure, right? This whole roof line, this is our enclosure. We have a UV bulb right here. Now, this is only how much it's gonna cover. You see what I'm saying? So there's this whole area that does not get UVB access, which means if the animal's chilling here, they don't have access, no access here. Versus if you get the linear tube all across the top, that means boom. It means boom, like that. So most of the enclosure will have UVB access, and if you have the enclosure set up properly, like we mentioned earlier, the animal will have ways to escape it if they don't want to be under it, but they'll always have easily accessible access to it. Also, 9 times out of 10, the UV tubes are higher quality and last significantly longer. Bulbs, in my experience, when I was still using them, getting into the hobby, will only last maybe a couple months, versus the Arcadia tubes, which I use for everything in this room, last about 12 months. If I have a UV meter, I guarantee you they last longer, because that's how they work. It's just a guaranteed 12 months they're going to put out their proper output. Yeah. Next slide. Ooh. Now, this is one that I find interesting because I see this one about 50-50 when it comes to people who have anoles who probably shouldn't have anoles. Either have a heat bulb or they don't. It's honestly cut down the middle. Now, something I've noticed is when it comes to people who have the heat bulb, they're gonna basically have one that is hot and not have humidity, which means that little lizard in there that likes being humid is getting cooked, which will have horrible effects on the animal and may even result in death. So what's the way we can get around it? Rewatch the humidity part from earlier, obviously. But simple way to get around it is have a proper setup like we mentioned earlier, proper humidity like we mentioned earlier, and knowing what kind of heat you need output. For example, these crown giants behind me, Anolis douglaris, they need a lot hotter bulbs than, say, these guys next to me being the Anolis farius. I almost said Anolis valencii, but those guys like to actually run hot for a smaller Anole species. I was geeking. I'm sorry. Look at the new Anole tattoo. If you can guess what this is based off in the comments, you get 5 cookie points and the hearts. It's peeling. Give me a couple days, it's gonna look thick. Back to Prater wattage, and no longer talking about my super cool tattoos. Well, at the end of the day, different homes need different kind of watts. For example, everyone in this room besides the crown giants, obviously, and the valencii, they're using about 50 watt bulbs, keeps them to the nice heating range, about 80 to 90 basking, you get what I'm saying? Versus someone who may have a cooler home might not suffice, if you get what I'm saying. So, do your research into actually how your, home is working, and, if it's a little cold, you're gonna need maybe a hotter bulb. Personally, I always recommend just buy one and, get a heat gun, don't have an animal in it, and just go pew, and make 100% sure, because you can do all the research in the world, but guess what? Maybe you forgot one thing, and now you have to figure it out as you go. End of the video. Technically not, because I'm gonna yap a little bit. Well, if you like this video, please sub, like, and share, and thank y'all for actually, clicking on my thumbnail that may be questionable, and sitting and watching me talk in a somewhat interesting manner that may just be, brain deaf for a lot of y'all. Sorry. Yeah. But, something I do want to talk about is if you do want to learn more about, more individual anoles, because this whole video is about anoles, but anoles are, variable. As you know, I've been kind of dropping hits in this video, especially with the ludes, valencii, farius, etc., etc. There is variation per species. So if you do want to learn a little bit about, more individualistic species English, just click that playlist. Ooh, yeah, that's super cool. And now this is the official end of the video. Ooh, I wonder what my eyes look like.